brothers and sisters across the world. Today I speak not just as a man, not just as a soldier or a leader of a nation, but as a voice among millions who cry out for dignity, justice, and true independence. The world is changing. The eyes of the people are open. No longer can we accept a future that is dictated by foreign interests, economic chains, and the legacy of colonial control. We are at a turning point in history. Across Africa, and indeed across many parts of the world, a fire is rising in the hearts of the youth, a fire of resistance, of pride, and of hope. It is not a fire that burns to destroy, but a fire that brings light to truth and warmth to those left in the cold by global systems that profit from our poverty. To the people of the world, we do not seek war, we do not seek division, but we demand respect. We demand the right to determine our own destiny. Our lands are rich, yet our people are poor. Our voices are loud, yet we are ignored. This contradiction must end. To the powerful nations, you built your wealth from our sweat, our minerals, and our silence. That silence is over. We are not your enemies, but we are no longer your servants. Cooperation must be based on equality, not domination. Aid must not be a tool for control. We want partnerships, not puppeteers. To the youth across Africa and the world, you are the engine of change. Do not wait for permission to dream. Do not ask for freedom. It must be taken with courage, with unity, and with unwavering belief in our right to be free. Educate yourselves. Organize. Speak up. Stand up. Your voice is the most powerful weapon you hold. To the oppressed, to the marginalized, and to those who are tired of being forgotten, know that you are not alone. The struggle of one people is the struggle of all people. Whether you are in the streets of Ouagadougou, the fields of Palestine, the townships of South Africa, or the favelas of Brazil, our struggle is shared. Our liberation is bound together. Let us rise together. Let us reject fear. Let us rebuild nations that serve the people, not foreign masters. Let us write a new chapter in human history, one of justice, of freedom, of dignity, not just for Africa, but for all humanity. Ibrahim Traoré's call for true independence is more than a political statement. It is a cry from the soul of a continent that has endured centuries of exploitation, manipulation, and control. He speaks to a long and painful history in which African nations were stripped of their autonomy, their resources plundered, and their people denied the right to define their own future. True independence, as he envisions it, is not just about the absence of colonial flags or foreign administrators. It is about full sovereignty over land, over wealth, over decisions, and over the narrative of what it means to be free. For many African countries, formal independence came decades ago. Borders were redrawn, constitutions drafted, and national anthems played in newly declared republics. But beneath the surface of these changes, much remained the same. The economies continued to serve the interests of former colonizers. The currency remained tethered to European financial systems. Military training, political advice, and development strategies were imported from abroad. Leaders who resisted were often replaced, not through democratic processes, but through coups supported by foreign powers, often in the name of stability. Traoré's voice brings this reality to light, not to dwell on the past, but to warn against repeating it. His message is direct. Political flags mean little if the people cannot eat, if they do not own the fruits of their labor, if decisions about their lives are still being made in foreign capitals. Independence, in the truest sense, must be rooted in control over natural resources: gold, uranium, oil, fertile land, and water. For too long, these resources have enriched others, while local communities remain trapped in poverty. Multinational corporations extract wealth while leaving environmental destruction and little sustainable development behind. Contracts are signed in secrecy, royalties are minimal, and the benefits rarely touch the lives of ordinary citizens. Traoré rejects this model. He calls for a new paradigm, one where African resources are used first and foremost to build African futures. But sovereignty is not just economic, it is also political and cultural. Traoré points out that many African governments are still heavily influenced, even indirectly controlled, by foreign agendas. Aid money often comes with strings attached. Policies must be adopted, alliances formed, or votes guaranteed in international bodies. Foreign military presence is justified under the banner of fighting terrorism, yet it often undermines local authority and accountability. In this environment, true independence cannot be achieved. The people must be the only source of legitimacy for governments. Policies must be made in Africa, for Africans, based on the continent's realities, not imposed blueprints from abroad. There is also a cultural dimension to this call. Traoré understands that the battle for independence is fought not just in parliaments and resource contracts, but in the minds of the people. A colonized mindset, one that sees foreign ideas as superior, foreign goods as better, and foreign leadership as necessary, must be challenged. He calls on Africans to reclaim their identity with pride. Indigenous languages, traditions, and knowledge systems must be restored and respected. Education must empower students to think critically, not just to recite facts drawn from foreign textbooks. Independence, he insists, begins with self-belief and a clear understanding of one's own value and history. In making this call, Traoré is not advocating for isolation. He is not rejecting cooperation with the rest of the world. Instead, he is drawing a firm line between cooperation and domination. Africa can and should engage globally, trade, share knowledge, build alliances, but on equal terms. No more partnerships where one side gains and the other remains dependent. No more decisions made behind closed doors without the consent of the people. He dreams of an Africa that stands tall at the table of nations, proud, capable, and in control of its own future. This vision of true independence is both ambitious and urgent. Traoré knows that the road ahead will not be easy. Powerful forces benefit from the status quo, and they will resist change. But he also knows that the spirit of the people cannot be crushed. Across the continent, young men and women are waking up. They are asking questions. They are demanding change. They are ready to take responsibility for their future. And in this rising generation, Traoré sees hope, not just for Burkina Faso, but for the whole of Africa. True independence is not a gift. It is not a slogan. It is a duty and a struggle. And through his words, Traoré invites the entire continent and the world to recognize that the time for half measures is over. The time to reclaim Africa's destiny has come. When Ibrahim Traoré calls for respect and equality on the global stage, he speaks not only for Burkina Faso, but for countless nations across Africa, and beyond that have been treated as second-class participants in the world system. His demand is simple yet deeply profound, that Africa should no longer be viewed as a subordinate, a pawn in international games, or a land defined by need and dependence. Instead, African nations must be acknowledged as equal partners, sovereign, capable, and deserving of dignity in all international dealings. For decades, the world has operated in a way that favors the powerful. The institutions that set global rules, whether economic, political, or security-related, have too often been dominated by the interests of a few nations. These powerful countries, backed by wealth and influence, shape the terms of trade, control international finance, and intervene, directly or indirectly, in the domestic affairs of weaker nations. Under the banner of diplomacy, development, or defense, unequal relationships have flourished. What Traoré demands is a new kind of relationship, one that is grounded in fairness and mutual benefit, not in the legacy of empire or the logic of control. Respect means listening, not dictating. It means recognizing that African nations are not empty vessels waiting to be filled with outside solutions. They are rich in culture, intelligence, and resilience. Yet too often, when African leaders speak out, especially those who challenge the established order, they are dismissed, undermined, or even targeted. Traoré stands firm in asserting that African voices must not only be heard but taken seriously in shaping global policy. Africa does not lack ideas. It lacks the space and freedom to implement them without external interference. Equality goes beyond the symbolic. It is not just about sharing seats at conferences or signing declarations of friendship. It is about ensuring that decisions affecting global markets, climate policy, conflict resolution, and technological development are made with African countries at the table, not just as observers, but as active decision makers. Traoré points out the double standards that often arise. When powerful countries make decisions in their own interest, it is called strategy. When African countries assert their needs, it is called resistance or defiance. This kind of framing must end. Every nation, regardless of size or GDP, has the right to pursue its own path. The call for respect and equality also extends to the economic sphere. Traoré draws attention to the deeply unequal trade relationships that persist. African countries export raw materials at low prices and import finished goods at high costs, a pattern that locks them into a cycle of dependency. Global trade rules often favor wealthy nations and penalize those trying to industrialize or protect local industries. Loans and financial aid, while useful in emergencies, often come with conditions that erode sovereignty and promote models that may not align with local realities. Traoré is clear. Africa does not want charity, it wants fairness. In advocating for mutual respect, Traoré is not pushing for confrontation. He is not anti-Western or anti-globalization. What he opposes is exploitation in the name of partnership. He understands that the world is interconnected and cooperation is essential. But cooperation must be based on trust and transparency, not manipulation and pressure. Real partnerships require acknowledging past wrongs and working to correct them, not pretending they never existed. They require listening to the concerns of African citizens, not just the preferences of foreign investors. For Traoré, respect and equality are not abstract ideals. They are the foundation of a peaceful and just world order. A world built on exploitation will always be unstable. A world built on fairness has the chance to thrive. He urges powerful nations to reconsider how they relate to Africa, not from a position of dominance, but of shared humanity. There is much to gain from working together as equals. Africa offers resources, yes, but also creativity, youthful energy, and solutions to global problems, from food security to renewable energy to peace building. This vision is both a warning and an invitation. If the world continues to ignore Africa's call for equality, the consequences will grow, resistance will harden, and trust will erode. But if the world embraces a new path of mutual respect, the rewards will be shared by all. In standing up to demand equality, Ibrahim Traoré is not dividing the world, he is trying to unite it on just terms. The time to build those relationships, rooted in dignity and truth, is now. In his powerful speech, Ibrahim Traoré places the youth at the very center of the struggle for transformation. He does not speak to them as a distant leader, offering empty encouragement. He speaks as one of them, as a young man who understands the urgency, the frustration, and the potential that the youth carry. For Traoré, the future is not something that will be handed to young people. It is something they must seize for themselves, through courage, knowledge, unity, and relentless action. Africa is a continent defined by its youth. With one of the youngest populations in the world, it holds within its borders a tremendous reservoir of energy, talent, and creativity. But too often, this potential is stifled by systems that fail to include them, economies that do not employ them, and politics that do not represent them. Traoré's message is clear. Young people must not wait for permission to act. They must not wait for broken systems to suddenly start working in their favor. The time to rise is now. The time to take ownership of the future is now. He urges the youth to start with education, not only formal education in classrooms and universities, but self-education that builds awareness, critical thinking, and a deep understanding of history and current realities. Traoré understands that true empowerment begins with knowledge. Young people must study their nation's pasts, not the sanitized versions often taught in colonial textbooks, but the real history of resistance, struggle, and identity. They must learn the mechanisms of power, understand how decisions are made, how systems are maintained, and how those systems can be changed. This knowledge is not just for personal advancement, it is for collective liberation. But knowledge alone is not enough. Traoré calls for unity among young people. He warns against the divisions that weaken movements and make it easier for those in power to maintain the status quo. Ethnic, regional, religious, and political divisions must be overcome. Unity does not mean uniformity. It means building a shared vision, finding common ground, and standing together even when opinions differ. Traoré reminds the youth that their greatest strength lies in solidarity. When united, they are unstoppable. When divided, they are easily controlled. He challenges the idea that youth must wait their turn, that they must gain approval from older generations or foreign institutions before stepping into leadership. The world has often told young people to be patient, to prepare for a future that never seems to arrive, but Traoré rejects this. He says the future is already here, and young people must claim their place in shaping it. They must organize, create movements, build communities, start businesses, lead protests, run for office, and design their own solutions. They must stop asking for change and start becoming the change. At the heart of Traoré's message is a deep belief in the power of young people, not just to resist, but to rebuild. Resistance is essential, but it is not enough. The youth must also envision and create new systems, more just, more inclusive, more responsive to the needs of the people, They must think boldly, beyond the limitations imposed by old ideologies and outdated structures. Innovation, imagination, and fearlessness are essential. Africa's future must be written by its youth, in their own language, in their own image. He also speaks directly to the despair many young people feel, the sense of being trapped in cycles of poverty, violence, or migration. He acknowledges that the path is not easy, that the system is stacked against them, but he refuses to let them accept defeat. He urges them to believe in themselves and in each other. Even when hope seems distant, action is still possible. Even when the odds are great, unity makes them stronger. He tells them, "You are not alone. Across villages, cities, and borders, there are millions just like you, ready to rise." Finally, Traoré places a moral responsibility on the youth. With power comes duty. This is not a time for selfish ambition or passive waiting. It is a time for sacrifice, discipline, and deep commitment to the people. The youth must lead with integrity, not repeat the mistakes of the past. They must build societies that reflect the values of justice, equality, and freedom, not only in words, but in the lived experiences of every citizen. In his call to the youth, Ibrahim Traoré does not offer easy answers. He offers a challenge and a profound respect. He sees in the youth not just the future, but the present leaders of a new era. The world may not expect much from them, but Traoré does. He expects greatness, and he believes they are ready to deliver it. In his message to the world, Ibrahim Traoré expresses an unwavering solidarity with all oppressed peoples across the globe. His words are not confined to the borders of Burkina Faso or even to the African continent. He speaks with a voice that recognizes the pain, struggle, and resistance of people everywhere who face injustice. For Traoré, the fight against oppression is not isolated. It is deeply interconnected. It crosses national lines, languages, and histories. The liberation of one group cannot be separated from the liberation of others. It is a shared goal, a global mission, and a moral responsibility that all conscious people must embrace. Traoré does not view the suffering of others as distant or irrelevant. He knows that oppression, no matter where it occurs, is built on the same systems of exploitation, domination, and inequality. Whether it is the economic strangulation of poor nations, the occupation of lands, the systemic racism faced by minorities, or the political suppression of dissenting voices, the tools of oppression are familiar, and the pain they cause is universal. When people are denied their rights, their dignity, and their freedom, the fight against that injustice becomes the concern of all those who believe in humanity. Traoré stands shoulder to shoulder with oppressed peoples from every part of the world, from Palestinians fighting for their homeland to indigenous communities defending their lands in Latin America, from marginalized workers in Asia to those suffering under apartheid-like conditions in parts of the world still ruled by racial or ethnic domination. His voice speaks for unity. He acknowledges that although the details of each struggle differ, the enemy is often the same: systems that prioritize profit over people, power over freedom, and division over solidarity. In expressing solidarity, Traoré does not offer symbolic words. He offers commitment. He understands that true solidarity is not passive. It requires action. It requires standing up, even when it is inconvenient or unpopular, to defend the oppressed. It means using one's platform not to speak for others, but to amplify their voices, to connect their struggles, and to help build bridges of understanding and cooperation. Traoré's solidarity is not about headlines or applause. It is about responsibility, about recognizing that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. He calls on African nations and their people to look beyond their borders, to see themselves as part of a broader human movement for dignity and rights. For too long, divisions have been exploited by those who benefit from chaos and conflict. Ethnic, national, and religious identities have been manipulated to divide people who should be allies in struggle. Traoré urges unity, not only within Africa, but with all those across the world who resist tyranny, who fight for clean water, for education, for land, for fair wages, for peace, for life. This global consciousness is what gives real strength to the cause of liberation. He also understands the spiritual and emotional power of knowing that one is not alone in their fight. Many oppressed people suffer in silence, believing their pain is forgotten or ignored. Traoré's message is a reminder that their voices matter, that their struggles are seen, and that they are part of a larger community of resistance. His solidarity offers hope, not as an empty gesture, but as a declaration of shared fate. When the powerful attempt to isolate movements, to break the will of those who resist, it is solidarity that keeps the flame alive. Ultimately, Traoré's vision is not only about resistance, it is about building a new world, a world in which people are not judged by the nation of their birth, the color of their skin, or the language they speak, but by their humanity. A world in which borders do not divide the righteous, and justice is not a privilege but a right. This is not a dream, he insists. It is a future that can be built, brick by brick, through unity, sacrifice, and unwavering solidarity. In this vision, all the oppressed, whether in Africa, Asia, Latin America, or anywhere else, are not just victims but participants in shaping a better tomorrow. Their courage inspires, their resistance uplifts, and their determination strengthens the bonds of a global struggle for freedom. And Traoré, through his words and actions, offers his unwavering hand in that shared journey. In his concluding words, Ibrahim Traoré delivers not merely a closing statement, but a powerful and urgent call to action, a vision for a just future that stretches beyond the borders of Burkina Faso or the African continent. His dream is not small, and it is not limited. It is a vision built on the foundational values of justice, dignity, and freedom, aimed at transforming not just one nation, but the condition of humanity as a whole. He offers no illusions about the road ahead, yet his tone is not of despair, but of determination. It is a call to believe in something greater, to strive for a world where equality is real and liberation is shared. Traoré's vision begins with justice, not as a vague ideal, but as a concrete demand. He speaks of justice in every form, economic, social, political, and historical. It means a world where wealth is not concentrated in the hands of a few, while billions struggle to survive. It means a system where countries are not punished for asserting their sovereignty, and where no nation holds the power to determine the fate of others. Justice, for him, is about dismantling systems that were designed to exploit and replacing them with structures that uplift. It is about recognizing the damage caused by centuries of colonization, resource extraction, and economic manipulation, and taking real steps to repair that harm. Dignity, in Traoré's vision, is just as central. He insists that every person, regardless of nationality, background, or status, deserves to live with dignity. This means more than survival. It means being able to live with pride, purpose, and full recognition of one's humanity. Too often, he notes, African people are treated as problems to be solved, or as beneficiaries of aid, rather than as equal participants in shaping the world. He challenges this mindset and affirms that dignity must be non-negotiable. Every child should grow up knowing that they are not inferior. Every community should have the right to define its path without being dictated to from foreign capitals or financial institutions. Dignity is about voice, representation, and respect. Traoré's call to action is rooted in this vision. He does not ask others to make the future for Africa or any other region. He calls on people, especially the young, the working class, the marginalized, to take it upon themselves to build it. He believes in people power, in grassroots movements, in the ability of ordinary citizens to change the course of history. He urges them to organize, to educate, to resist, and to rebuild. He warns against the temptation to wait for saviors or for institutions to reform themselves. Change must be driven by those who suffer most from the current order, and change must be built from the ground up, not imposed from above. At the same time, Traoré's vision is not about revenge or retaliation. It is not driven by hatred, but by hope. He wants a world where former colonizers and formerly colonized people alike can live in peace and mutual respect. He wants relationships between nations to be based on cooperation, not exploitation. He imagines a future where global wealth is shared more equitably, where education and healthcare are guaranteed for all, and where the environment is protected not for profit, but for the survival of future generations. He acknowledges that such a future will not come easily. It will be resisted by those who benefit from injustice. It will be mocked by those who claim it is unrealistic. But Traoré believes that history has always been shaped by those who dared to dream beyond the limitations of their time. He reminds us that every great transformation began with a vision, and that every vision requires people willing to make sacrifices for something larger than themselves. In closing, Traoré invites all people of conscience to join in this collective journey. He is not building a wall between Africa and the rest of the world. He is building a bridge, one that spans the divides of race, class, and geography. It is a bridge toward a future in which no one is left behind. His words are not just meant to inspire, they are meant to mobilize. For those who still believe in justice, dignity, and freedom, the time is now. The vision is clear. The choice is ours. In his speech to the world, Ibrahim Traoré delivers a bold and uncompromising rejection of neocolonialism, condemning the ongoing exploitation of African nations under the guise of development, cooperation, and aid. He speaks with clarity and conviction, exposing how modern systems of control have replaced the old colonial chains with new, subtler forms of domination. The flags may have changed, and African countries may now have presidents instead of governors, but the mechanisms that keep them dependent, weak, and divided remain largely intact. Traoré's words are not only an indictment of the current global order, but also a call for a complete rethinking of how Africa engages with the rest of the world. Neocolonialism, as Traoré describes it, is the continuation of colonial power through economic and political manipulation. It is not as visible as soldiers occupying land, but it is just as destructive. It comes in the form of unequal trade agreements, foreign-controlled banks, externally dictated policies, and the constant undermining of national sovereignty. It is the way African countries are forced to export raw materials at cheap prices and import finished products at inflated costs, perpetuating a cycle of poverty and underdevelopment. It is the way international financial institutions impose reforms and austerity in exchange for loans, while local economies are hollowed out and social services collapse. One of the most dangerous pillars of neocolonialism, according to Traoré, is the illusion of aid. While humanitarian assistance is sometimes necessary in times of crisis, it has increasingly become a tool used to maintain control. Aid is often tied to conditions, both visible and hidden, that force African countries to adopt policies that benefit donors more than recipients. In exchange for funding, governments are pushed to open their markets to foreign corporations, privatize public services, reduce protections for local industries, and prioritize debt repayment over healthcare, education, or infrastructure. Traoré calls this what it truly is, a form of modern enslavement, masked in the language of generosity and development. He warns that this dependency on foreign aid creates a mentality of subordination. It teaches countries to wait for handouts instead of building self-sufficiency. It undermines local initiative, innovation, and accountability. Worst of all, it conditions political leaders to serve external interests rather than the needs of their own people. Traoré urges African nations to break free from this cycle. He believes that true development cannot be imported. It must be built from within, using local knowledge, resources, and values. African countries must reclaim control over their economies, assert their political independence, and invest in their own people. Traoré also highlights how foreign military presence in Africa often reinforces neocolonial structures. Under the pretext of fighting terrorism or ensuring stability, foreign powers have stationed troops, built bases, and inserted themselves into African security affairs. These military arrangements rarely benefit the local population. Instead, they serve geopolitical interests, protect resource extraction, and prop up regimes that align with external agendas. Traoré argues that no country can be truly free while foreign soldiers patrol its soil or dictate its defense strategy. Security must come from within, from strong, accountable institutions and the unity of the people. He is equally critical of how global institutions are structured. Organizations like the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and even the United Nations are dominated by a handful of powerful countries. Decisions that impact millions of Africans are made in boardrooms in Washington or Brussels, with little input from those affected. Traoré questions how justice and equity can exist in a world where those who caused many of Africa's problems still control the solutions. He calls for a new global order, one in which African voices are central, not marginal. One in which the continent is no longer seen as a market, a battlefield, or a charity case, but as a full participant in shaping the world's future. At the heart of Traoré's rejection of neocolonialism is a fierce belief in African potential. He does not see a continent destined to be poor or perpetually dependent. He sees strength in Africa's youth, wisdom in its elders, and promise in its land. He believes that with unity, vision, and courage, African countries can become truly sovereign, not only in name, but in substance. But this will not happen through minor reforms or polite negotiations. It requires a radical break from the structures and mindsets that have held the continent back. Traoré is not asking for favors from the world. He is demanding space for Africa to stand on its own feet. He is calling on leaders to stop begging for help and start building with confidence. He is urging the people to reject the lies of dependency and to see through the empty promises of those who exploit under the guise of assistance. His message is clear. Africa does not need to be saved. It needs to be respected. And most of all, it needs to be free.